Okay, it says that we're live streaming, so let's all assume that we're live streaming. Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you are able to see this on YouTube. Give me a second. I'm hearing a... Sorry, there was an echo in my ear because I was watching myself on YouTube. So now I don't have the echo of myself talking to myself. Thanks, everybody, for watching. My name is Jason Norman, and I am Programs and Events Coordinator at the Writers Guild of Alberta. Before we move ahead, I just wanted to acknowledge that the Writers Guild is located on treaty territory. Edmonton, I'm coming to you from Treaty 6 territory. We have guests coming to you today from Red Deer and Calgary, treaties 7 and 8, I believe. And this is night 1 of our readings with the Alberta Literary Awards finalists. This is something we get to do every year. We used to do it in person, and we would do one in Edmonton and one in Calgary, and sometimes people could make it on a Sunday afternoon, or we used to do them, I think, or Saturday afternoon. And sometimes people couldn't, and we've been doing them online for a couple of years now, and we get more people to come and read, so I think that's been great. And one of our guests was saying that it's just much easier. You get to stay at home and relax and chill, and then when your reading's done, just relax some more. So we hope that you're nice and relaxed as you are watching this. I wanted to let you all know that our awards gala is on Saturday, June 11th. We are still being very secretive about our tickets details because we're just trying to keep everything safe in terms of the COVID situation that we're all living through. Hopefully we get to see all the finalists that are here tonight at the event, and the finalists that we see tomorrow. And I also wanted to remind you that our annual WGA conference, Shifting Creative Gears, is the weekend before the awards gala. So that would be the weekend of June 3rd. I think it's 3rd to 5th, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we have online options, we have in-person options, and if you go to writersguild.ca, you can see those. So I think I didn't forget anything. I'm going to get right to our first reader for the night. Bear with me. And Constance, you can unmute yourself and say hello while I look for your bio if you'd like.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much to the Writers Guild of Alberta and the R. Ross Annette Award for Children's Literature. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh my gosh, I don't have your bio. Just a second. I'm so sorry.
I could just say a few things.
Why don't I introduce you, and you can introduce, you can tell us a little bit more about the co-author and your partner as well. So Constance Brissenden, co-author of books by Larry Loyi, is a freelance writer and editor based in Edmonton. Larry and Constance met in a creative writing course in 1993 and continued as life partners until his passing in 2016. Constance continues to write and edit, including 4 new editions of their books, the Lawrence series, The Moon Speaks Cree, When the Spirits Dance, and Goodbye Buffalo Bay, as well as Young Man, True Stories of a Cree Childhood, an anthology due in 2022. The Larry Loyi and Constance Brissenden collection of residential school research is at UBC's Residential School History and Dialogue Center. And Constance is nominated in the R. Ross Annette Children's Chapter Book category. And Constance, did you want to just say a little bit more about Larry before you read a passage for us today?
I'm very happy to represent our books. Larry, of course, Larry Loyi was the main creative force, being a Cree who lived a traditional childhood and then spent 6 years in residential school. I was honored to meet him in a creative class and be his co-author and editor. Jason, can you show some photographs?
I will start to share now.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to read from Wild Waters Inside a Voyager's World, which is our book that's up for a chapter book award in children's literature. Just want to say one thing, background about it. It's based on a diary that's in this book, Peace River, a canoe voyage from Hudson's Bay to the Pacific. Here's a photograph of Larry at approximately age 70. He was he's in Gruard, where he went to residential school, burning some sweetgrass for the students that are buried in the cemetery. Larry's not only wrote 4 books about residential school, including Residential Schools with the Words and Images of Survivors, which is a national history, but also books about his childhood. Then he was inspired to write Wild Waters Inside a Voyager's World because he said, our traditions, our culture did not start with residential school. We were here right from when the first colonizers arrived in Quebec. And so he found his 4 times great grandfather's name in that book, the Peace River book. And he said, I'm going to research him and I'm going to write about him. His grandfather's name was Thomas. So I'm going to read from something that happened on August 27th, 1828 at Fort Dunvegan. In the diary, it says merely that someone in the canoe thought that he saw a bison, but they were convinced that the bison were actually extinct in that area. And in the morning, they need to get some food, so they sent out Thomas and 2 other men to do some hunting for the canoe brigade. The climb to the north side of the fort was an easy one. A morning breeze cooled Thomas' brow. Charpentier and Hugues had walked up the other side of the plateau to spread out on the high plain above. Thomas was alone for the first time in a long time. His legs felt weak. After nearly 4 months in a canoe, they were losing their strength. I'm glad to be walking without a load, he said out loud. Then he added, I'm glad to be alone. Life as a voyageur was not the dream he once had. He was part of a brigade, a servant of the bay. His life determined by Ugimau, the governor, George Simpson. He had plenty of time to observe Simpson's habits. Ugimau thought only of himself and of his great ambition. He treated the people along the rivers as if they were his children. Without us, the great Hudson's Bay Company would be nothing, Thomas thought. The white men want our labor, our furs, our loyalty, and our women, and believe it is their right. He stopped abruptly, noticing something pleasant. Birds were singing around him. A small gray bird with a yellow breast darted from willow bush to willow bush. He hadn't noticed birds for a long time. Thomas walked quietly upward, following the paths that animals had etched in the ground. He turned and looked back over the Peace River, a blue expanse of shimmering water flowing between rolling hills. This country is beautiful. One day I hope to return and enjoy it again, he whispered. As if coming from deep within the earth, a strange grunting sound caught his attention. For a moment, Thomas was startled. Ghosts? Could it be the ghosts of the 5 murdered men rising from the earth? He shook his head. He didn't believe in ghosts and knew he wouldn't until the day he saw one. What was it then? He heard the grunting again, followed by the sound of hooves pawing at the earth. Deer didn't sound like this. Perhaps it was a moose hidden somewhere ahead of him? Thomas crouched closer to the grasses of the hill. He crept silently and slowly toward the sound. Finally, as he came closer, he lay down on his belly, holding his rifle ahead of him. Deep in a gully, Thomas heard the animal. From the guttural sound, he could tell it was big and powerful. He waited without moving. Then, inch by inch, he crawled to the edge of the gully. Below him, half hidden by willow trees, was a huge animal. Thick, curly hair, reddish-brown in color, covered its giant head. 2 horns curved upward. This must be a bison, he realized, one of the ones that used to own these hills. It would have towered over Thomas if he had stood beside it. The bison suddenly settled upon the earth and began chewing its cud, its eyes half closed. Its bulk was enormous. What should I do? Thomas asked himself. This beast was massive. Not that Thomas was afraid. He knew he could kill it. He should kill it. That was his job today. One easy shot through the brain and the bison would be dead. He pulled himself back. A feeling of respect rose in his heart. Bison were rarely seen anymore in this part of the world, and here was one right in front of him. The bison closed his eyes and slept. He was at peace, a peace that Thomas envied. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Constance. You're getting virtual claps in the background there. Thank you so much, and good luck in June. And so we started this reading with a screen share that I had to manage, and now I'm going to try another screen share for our next reading with a video. So I'm just working on a high wire so far. So I'm gonna pull it up. Our next reader is Lorna Schultz Nicholson, and who is also nominated in the children's literature chapter book category. And I am going to bring up Lorna's video, and I will read her bio afterwards because I cannot find it. So let's try and see if this works. Sorry, everybody, just hold on. Premee, we might have to go to you if I can't get this to go. So let's try again. Okay. Here we go. Got it. That's something I hadn't figured out how to do yet, I guess, is figure out the sound. So you can all hear me now? Nodding your heads? Okay. I'm sorry, Lorna, I couldn't get the sound. I will figure that out, and maybe we'll air it later, or I will, yeah, Premee's right. Are you ready to go now, Premee? And then I'll try to see if I can figure it out. Okay, perfect. Let me bring up your bio. Premee Mohamed is a multiple award nominated Indo-Caribbean scientist and speculative fiction author based in Edmonton, Alberta. She is an assistant editor at the short fiction audio venue Escape Pod and the author of the Beneath the Rising series and other works. She can be found on Twitter at Premesaurus and on her website at premeemohamed.com. And Premee, you are nominated in multiple categories. Is that correct? We have you can come up and you can unmute now whenever. The City of Edmonton Book Prize, is that correct? and the fiction prize. Is that correct?
Yep. And it's actually also up for an Aurora.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Yeah, thank you to the Writers Guild of Alberta for organizing this and for nominating the book as well. This is from the Annual Migration of Clouds, Chapter 7. Reed and Henrik have decided to go on a rabbit hunt. By the time I meet Henrik over by the drop, I'm tired and cranky from the morning's work and skipping lunch. He doesn't look like he's faring much better. First things first, we must get that out of the way. You look like shit, I tell him. You too. And you need a haircut, that rat's nest. What, so I can look like you? You wish, he says loftily, because I have walked into it. You could look like me. Up yours. Up what, I always wonder, he says. I mean, yours could be anything. Oh, I don't know. It's just such a mom thing to say, so it must be something really terrible. The stairs down to the valley gleam in the long afternoon light, soft-edged gold, 2 lanes marked in dark parallel smears, going up, going down. Every couple of years, they have to be replumbed, leveled, and shored up, for the ground beneath them has been eaten away far below their original footings. But here it's either climb the stairs or take a rope down, and we've both been rope burned enough. We hang onto the railings and descend slowly, putting both feet on each step like toddlers, ignoring the magpies that flutter down to laugh at us. Very funny. Magpies always seem to want to know what you're doing, and once they know, they want to supervise. Go away, I tell them. You're terrible spies. Well, don't talk to them, you'll only encourage them. Where did you read that? Some old lady told me. I don't just read, you know. We wind between stumps and saplings, step through dogwood, rose, handsy willow, batting away the light branches, dried out and stiff from the long winter. Sap has not risen yet, and the few inches of remaining soil are still frozen above the bedrock. Strong, sweet musk of last fall's leaves, exposed by the melting snow and forming slick rugs under our careful feet. A smell of childhood, running wild in the dust and the smoke, sliding on these leaves in the understory. Patches of snow remain in the shade, dirty brown and gray, but the droplets that melt from the icy trees are impossibly clear, sparkling and catching the sun and flying into our upturned faces like rain. What did you bring? I ask. A sling, spear. You? I found a couple of arrows, but they're all shit. From 2 summers ago, remember when McKinnon had that workshop thing and we all made like 100 of them? I glance at the bow on his back, white PVC like mine, smudged with grimy fingerprints. The string doesn't look too good, but I guess if his arrows are shit too, it won't matter. Mostly, I think we came to get our legs back under us, like going back to sea. It's funny, he begins, because like back then, yeah, they didn't even eat rabbit. You never see it in the cookbooks. Yeah, and if you wanted one, you could just shoot it with a gun. Back then and their guns. We don't even know what we mean exactly when we say back then, or back then, capitalized like Anno Domini. What time period in years? Yash and Malia's long ago girlhood, before CAD, before the ultra storms, the big one, and then the next big one, and then the next, and the next, and the next, often but not always roaring into the river valley like a giant stubbing his toe, collapsing into impotent rage and debris on our side. They didn't cause the end of everything, we figured. Everything was ending anyway. But neither was it very clear what did cause the rift between back then and now. So much burned and blew away, leaving no trace, like a carcass that didn't fossilize. As we mine out the landfills, at least they left us a lot of plastic to reuse, that was thoughtful, and burrow into basements and archives, sieving the books that our ancestors did not burn to survive the winters. You feel it sometimes, rage filling you like an updraft of hot air from a fire, lifting you from the shoulders or blowing through you like a tornado. Rage that we missed it all, and rage at those who got to have it in the specific way that took it from us. And we don't even know what it is, only that we want to get back to it, and we never will, because they made that impossible. What has been broken in a way that can no longer be fixed. reading about it all in novels, smartphones, internet, satellites, the ISS, movies, cruises, road trips, texting, trains, flying in planes over countries with the cloud shadows moving dark and wet over the land like ink, but also all the things they wrote in there that they did not mean to write about because they were too normal, letting us look at them from the corner of their eyes. Restaurants, rice, dumpsters, condoms, bosons, irrigation, pensions, bananas. I think, my Christ, imagine a world where you could fear flying. Henrik feels it too, the rage, the upward pull of it, when you know there's no starting over. When you know that everything we needed to start over was thrown away or burnt up decades before we were born. We can't have any of that. Malia told me, they said to us, we'll keep the lights on as long as we can. And they did. You could flip a switch and at least there was light. We could not run our stoves or our fridges, but light, always light. Then brownouts, then blackouts. The panels broke and no one could fix them. No more diesel for generators and no more coming. Click, click, click. Her long, beautiful willow gold hand gesturing at the dead switch on the wall. Till finally, we all had to admit nothing was coming back on. It was dark always. Now babies crawl around without fear and put their tongues into the sockets like there's milk inside. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. That was great. Okay, thank you for the people in the chat that helped me maybe try to figure out this the video sharing. So we'll find out in just a second. So Lorna Schultz Nicholson couldn't join us today, and but she made a video, and so we're gonna try my best, I'm gonna try my best to get it up today. Lorna Schultz Nicholson grew up in St. Catharines, Ontario, and as a child loved to read and write. But then athletics took over, and she put it all aside to be a jock. She even went so far as to get her BSc in Human Performance from the University of Victoria. With her degree, she worked as the Fitness and Recreation Coordinator at UVic, where she also coached rowing. And rowing is what this book is about. When You Least Expect It is the name of the book, and it is a finalist for the R. Rossinet Award for Children's Literature. Picture book. No, not picture book. It's a picture book. Anyway, I got myself confused. Sponsored by the Under the Arch Youth Foundation at the Calgary Foundation. So we're going to try one more time to share the video. And I'm going to do a little share audio thing too. Share sound. Aha. Okay.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you everyone for being here, and congrats to all the nominees. It is so exciting and is such an honor to be nominated for this award. Today I'm going to be reading to you from When You Least Expect It, and I'm going to read parts of the first chapter. And all you need to know is that Holly is in a seat race, and if you don't know what that is, that's okay. She has to win this race to make the national team, and if she doesn't, she's going home to a very strange family situation and a summer with no friends. So she's in the boat right now and she's getting ready to race. All my training, all my hard work on the indoor rowing machines, all my focus and dedication and time and going to bed early and getting up with the sunrise, it all came down to this: one more 2,000 meter race. My legs still shook, and my arms and my upper body and my brain. You got this. I looked forward, focusing on the elastic and the ponytail of the rower who was sitting in front of me. "Bow seat, touch it up, please," Eleanor spoke to me. I pulled my oar just a little to help straighten out the boat for her. The wind was tricky today, coming from the port side, so the boat was being pulled. The water also had a bit of chop. My heart still pounded out of sync with the chop. Even though my throat was dry, I couldn't take a sip of water now. "Okay, Bow, that's good," she said. "Rowers ready?" She spoke in this clear, calm voice, so unemotional. She was following the rules. With her experience, Eleanor had already made the team, so she wasn't in the fight. I didn't know Eleanor that well, as we didn't live in the same province. She was from Halifax, Nova Scotia. She had been instructed by the coaches to call the race with no emotion, so there was no advantage. Normally, the coxswains were the motivators, coaches in the boat. Not today. With my oar in the water, I was ready. Please just start the race already. Beside us, the motorboat chugged, the gas fumes circulating in the air. Boats, are you ready? One of the coaches called out from the motorboat. Ready, said Eleanor. I sat tall, focused on that elastic. The next thing I heard was the beep of the starting horn. Half, Eleanor called out. I drove my legs hard, pushed back, snapped my knees, got my oar through the water and out, using my wrist to turn the oar, flatten it, up the slide again. Half, Eleanor spoke with authority. Another half stroke. Again, I pushed back, helping to move the boat forward. 3/4. Longer stroke. The first few seconds had my heart rate in overdrive. The water churned beside the boat, little swells that slapped against the side of the shell. My legs pushed down, my hands moved around and out over my knees. I started up the slide again, following the rower in front of me. Where was the other boat? A look out of the boat could cause disruption, unnecessary movement, seconds on the time clock. Only the coxswain could look. Half, Eleanor spoke rowing language. Sitting at 42, she said, we had the boat moving at 42 strokes per minute. No wonder I was gasping, high for a 4. That highest stroke rate usually only lasted for the start. Full. I drove back hard on that first full stroke of the race. My breath was as frantic as the pace. Everything needed to slow down, catch the cadence so I could breathe. Give me 10 hard ones, said Eleanor. We'd done our 5-stroke start, and now the boat needed momentum. And the 10 hard strokes would do that. She started at 1. Where was the other boat? Don't worry, keep pushing, keep driving. 8 up the slide, push back. 9 up the slide, push back. After she called out 10, we settled into our race rhythm. We're at 34, she said. Bow, take over the race. Eleanor talked calmly. Now I had to call the race, me. Those were the rules in a seat race. I would call, and so would Kira. Eleanor would only give us where we sat in comparison to the other boat. The pace was okay, and I was hanging in there. Was everyone else? After the 10, we seemed to settle too much, though. Sure, the boat took on a rhythm that I was comfortable with, but maybe too comfortable. They've got half a boat on us, said Eleanor. Half a boat already? I had to do something. Take it up, I called from the bow. The rower sitting in the stern, in stroke seat, the seat that dictates the pace, accelerated, and I dug in hard to follow, pushing, sliding, pushing, sliding. We hit the 500-meter mark. There was still 1,500 to go. There's still half a boat ahead, said Eleanor. 20, I called out. Come on, 20 hard strokes. Did I do the right thing? 20 at the 500 mark was risky. We pushed through the 20, then the boat fell flat. I could feel it. Fatigue set into my legs, my hips, my upper body, my brain. Finally, 1,000 meters. Halfway done. My breathing was ragged. My legs were on fire, quads burning with every stroke. Should I call for another hard 20? I could see the other boat out of the corner of my eye, but it wasn't good. They were definitely ahead. Come on, keep going, Holly. 20, I called out in a gasp. The boat picked up a little. My legs seared and my breathing was like rapid burst, in and out, in and out. I kept sliding and pushing. Keep going, Holly, you can do it. Dig, dig, dig. 1,500 meters. Less than half a boat, said Eleanor. We were catching them. Could we? I had to push just a little harder. Harder, harder. Last 250, said Eleanor. Take it up, I yelled. We were moving, pushing. Could we do it? The horn blared, announcing a boat was across the finish line. Then a second horn. Thank you very much.
We did it. We shared a video, I think. It looked like it worked. Yeah. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you for taking the time to make the video. And yeah, that made things really easy. So our next guest is a finalist for the Stephen G. Stephenson Award for Poetry, which is sponsored by Stephen V. Benedictson, Kai Perraun, and their book Miraculous Sickness. And I will bring up your bio and then we'll hear Kai. Kai Perraun is an Edmonton poet living with schizophrenia. Her book Miraculous Sickness from At Bay Press details the treatment of schizophrenia throughout history and her peers' lived experiences. Kai, are you ready?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, it sounds good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jason. Okay, the history of the treatment of schizophrenia is pretty unpleasant. And even in the not too distant past in Canada, some treatments bordered on torture. For instance, this next poem that I'm going to read was reported in the Globe and Mail. It's called Hard Capsule to Swallow. This treatment was reported in the Globe and Mail. On June 7th, 2017, a judge ruled that doctors tortured patients in the Oak Ridge Penetanguishene facility in central Ontario in the late 60s and 70s. A maximum security institution, Oak Ridge housed the hard to handle. The doctors conducted experiments with drugs, solitary confinement, and brainwashing. They chained naked patients together in what they called the capsule program, kept them in a continually lit, windowless room, and fed them through straws. Some were kept with ankles bound together and tied to their wrists. One of the doctors involved wrote that Nazi techniques could be cited were it not that the afflicted did not choose their values, and that the medical team should use force, humiliation, and deprivation as they saw necessary to change the patient's values, right their chemistry, and overcome their apparent internal confusion. The judge quoted the Hippocratic Oath before passing judgment. Another fairly recent incident that happened out east in Canada involved a young Black man who died after being in restraints for 5 days. His crime was masturbating publicly on the ward. Modern day eulogy, elegy for Jeffrey. Palm, pulse, stroke, reprieve, pleasure overriding pain. Commands for the quickening stroke, out among the angels and spies by the fishbowl of scrubs and thick files where staff congregate, hungry for silence. Loud sounds demanding cessation, desire pulls, release eclipses reason. They converge and tackle these loud sound makers, sting of the syringe. The bed slams into his face, leather straps taut on wrist, ankle, oblivion. An empty room ebbs in and out of focus. Night becomes day 5 times over. Ache in the limb, a tightness, release. Then nothing. The patient is dead. A clot converged on his lung, stealing his breath. Gasp. Black Lives Matter. Jeffrey James, 34, patient at Toronto's CAMH, Center for Addictions and Mental Health. Rest in peace. Whether by cop or doctor, the tragedies abound. I call this one States of Schizophrenias. You want to make it better with your words, your pills, your programs. You have us perform parlor tricks for tokens, grant us privileges of small freedoms at the price of dignity. Father, nurse, may I play Monopoly? The ward is Park Place and I am a car. Mother, doctor, may I take a walk, a long one, on the short pier? Reduced to the status of ill-tempered toddlers, force-fed mind-numbing drugs, shuffling slack-jawed to bland, finely chopped meals. You promise, you promise, you promise, but rarely deliver. Rights, shelter, pleasure. We are tagged and tranquilized, then sent to the streets of spike-crusted doorways and enterprising hustlers. Your ledgers are balanced on our backs. You show a good return. The playpens you erect from the skeletons of theories are cost effective, cheaper than asylum in its most generous sense. We wander off, disillusioned, to be summarily captured in a terrible dance of the damned. Tra-la-la, do-si-do, and it's one for the fast track to Bedlam, the long, looping road home. In the not too distant past, they would remove organs from people with schizophrenia, thinking that they were infected and that this would cure the schizophrenia, was to remove the infected organ, even though they had no evidence of infection. It was called focal infection theory. Teeth, tonsils, cervix, ovaries, colon, removed from patients exhibiting psychosis, focal infection theory. Dr. Henry Cotton, operating in the 1920s, claimed such surgeries saved the state over $300,000 and had an 80% success rate. Excised, hollowed out, lighter in weight by the volume of flesh confiscated, but heavy with sedation, the patients as experiment deemed cured by virtue of new reticence, compliance, were paraded before an audience of eager medical men. Cotton said the patients were infected and, with no proof, removed pieces of their bodies in the hopes of bolstering their minds. Dr. Cotton, hand-picking patients, had his moment of glory, while those reduced by his treatment suffered their losses, learned to live, flesh lessened by the knife. Another treatment was the full frontal lobotomy. Holes drilled in skull, alcohol syringed into the cavities, later butter knife-like implements, and later still entry through the nose and eye sockets. Treatment continued until the patient exhibited disorientation. After, docility, incontinence, sometimes death. By 1953, in the United States alone, over 200,000 lobotomies were performed, at times in hotel rooms. Flashing instruments and authority, mind meddlers professed to cure by destroying brain tissue blindly. The unfortunate victims of medical science that survived drooled quietly in ward chairs, while the staff, relieved of the necessity to control the agitated, praised the inventor, Igas Moritz, Nobel laureate, 1949. When psychotropic drugs proved effective, the lobotomy went out of fashion, though psychosurgery may still be used in treatment-resistant patients today. 2, destroy what causes grief. Like generals on the battleground, determined doctors waged war on the diseased brain by excision. The results were so striking, word spread round the world, and soon many were subject to the pick or spatula, rendered subservient, docile, with flattened emotions. Success to the medical crew. Demons excised, sucked clean from the brain cave. Disruptive patients rendered meek, hospital crews dream. Around the world, doctors drilled holes in beleaguered skulls. Or, for the less agitated, a pick was inserted in the nostril or eye socket. Swish, swish. Is the patient disoriented? We hit the mother lode. She'll be no trouble at all if she lives. And finally, many of the psychotropic drugs that have been invented were serendipitous accidents. For instance, the first antidepressant was actually a treatment for tuberculosis, and they discovered that it had the effect of making people less depressed. And the first antipsychotic was actually used as an anesthesia, and it was an antihistamine used in surgery, and they discovered that made people lucid when they were psychotic. I call this lotus blossoms on the pond of eternity. The drugs they doled out to tubercular patients were the forerunners of today's antidepressants, causing the patient's eyes to shine preternaturally bright, their spirits to soar. On the heights of Magic Mountain, the invalids glow with beneficence, serotonin flowing like clear waterfalls. Today, we dissect the literature like those unfortunate formaldehyde marinated frogs, pins and placards naming turns of phrase, while our brains, uncharted, vibrate, gelatinous seats of the soul. I would like to tell you how it is inside this bony chalice, brain brimming with barbiturates and receptor taming tonics. But you would only measure my meter, scan my lines from music, the mineral rights of this landscape left to the mind doctors and their laboratory lingo, so prosaic. I move through your disciplined rooms, foot heavy and thick, subject, not author of my fate, clutching my prescription like a memo from God, my poems like formulae from forensics. The neurologist scribbles haiku on the wet windowsill. His tears of impotence fog his lenses, genuflecting before the vast library of the mausoleum. He counts syllables like brainwaves before locking his office against the erasure of night, only to dream of receptors, lotus blossoms on the pond of eternity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kai. And one of your fellow finalists in this category, the Stephen G. Stephenson Award for Poetry, is Rayanne Haines, and her book, Tell the Birds Your Body Is Not a Gun, from Frontenac House. And Rayanne Haines is the author of 7 books, including 3 poetry collections. Her artistic practice focuses on projects that look to redeem and empower women's narratives. In addition to her writing, teaching, and festival work, she also produces, curates intersectional feminist poetry films and panels with authors across Canada. Her current work focuses on mental health and intergenerational female trauma, and her newest work, Tell the Birds Your Body Is Not a Gun, released in 2021 with Frontenac House. Rayanne, are you there?
I am here.
Take it away.
Thanks, Jason. I wanted to also say to Kai, that was incredible. Thank you for your reading. I feel honored to be in this category with you. I haven't heard you read before, so that was a real pleasure. So this collection, just for a trigger warning, does deal with suicidal behavior and grief around depression and cancer scares. So just so people are aware that that's the material that's going to be shared. Okay. After my son considered death an option, I stopped eating meat. The idea of death, of swallowing it, became so abhorrent to me, I could no longer eat an animal. I don't want my body to be a boneyard or a church. I rub my belly in the night still, thinking of birth and open wounds and lesions and how I have no more pretty left. I am heavy-breasted, a fat-lipped truth. I do not look at myself dying in the bed. I do not clutch rosary. I rip my secrets from my body with scissors and bleach. So sure of the meaning of revelation, so sure this act will make me unhallowed. I want something sacred to find me because, yes, I met death on the basement stairwell. I met death in my bathroom mirror. I need to prove I am more than this fractured body, this bleached, sterile body held together by sinew and grief. Looking for a sale on rug cleaning products. Your appointment is scheduled for Wednesday. Under the bed, the rug is discolored with cat vomit. Your sweat stains the bed sheets, your clothing, your skin. Your son says he thinks everyone has cancer inside them. Her hands are warm as she lifts your breast. As per instruction, you wear no deodorant, no lotion. You don't tell your mother or friends. Your husband forgets, and you don't remind him because you'd rather do this alone. The lesion is the size of a dime. The machine squeezing your breast is cold. She tells you to relax your shoulders. Your son asks you if you are dying, and you tell him no. Pissner beer. This is a poem for that time you wanted to be happy, or things that make you laugh on a Tuesday. The True Story on CBC. You did not laugh. That is a lie. You is a metaphor for me. This is the story you need when hollow arrives, when bodies lie awake at night, when leaping over brush fires comes after the stories you tell yourself that it won't happen again. Story break. A brewery in Denmark is making beer using human urine. It's important to be on the cutting edge of science and food development if we want to survive the apocalypse. The specialty beer is called Pissner. The brew made with malting barley is fertilized by the contents of urinals at music festivals in Europe. 50,000 liters of human waste liquid was used as an alternative to traditional animal manure or factory-made fertilizer products. It tastes really good. It's fresh and full at the same time. We call it from sewer to brewer. You do not admit how heavy the gravestone is. This is an act of war. Holding it all is your superpower. It's easy to tell lies. The murmuration of crows, the dirt you shovel in the hole until the earth's crust cracks open. I will share before my last two poems that my son is doing quite well right now. He is currently writing his final exams in his first year of college. This is more of a comment than a question. 1. What happens when you become a cage you can't run from? 2. Being broken doesn't mean being a fragment. If I repeat this often enough, it will come true. 3. Hurting isn't love, even when it feels something like love because it feels like something. 4. You are not obligated to hold a bullet so everyone feels safe and good. Your body is not a gun. 5. Your body is not a stick or a house or a poem. 6. You are not a secret or a nightmare, like how the bees are dying or that hope won't save you. 7. It is okay to believe in God. I wrote this book over the course of 1 year while I was struggling with my own depression and trying to find a way to take it out of my body. It ended up becoming much more about myself surviving, grieving someone who didn't actually die, versus telling my son's story. The point, my friend. Today, the moon wanted the sun's face and the sun wanted the moon's smile, so they traded places. At least this is what I told myself while dreaming of tying rocks to my ankles after eating eggs and rum for my 4th breakfast. If I stayed under long enough, surely the sun would change her mind and let me drown in shadows. Turns out, a body can't hold its breath as long as the moon. Turns out, trying to die without dying is messy business. Yesterday, the neighbors I don't know heard me screaming on the beach. Now I have to apologize on behalf of the sun and the moon and my anxiety lemoning the sky, because no one enjoys seeing an unkempt life. And I, wearing a head-to-toe raspberry pantsuit, have to go on living. And I'll just close it with this piece, if I can find it. Labor pains. Woman I did not birth, be a nasty woman. Loud voiced, gut laughing deep in the belly, let secrets spill as splashes of indigo pouring down chins. Spread your legs wide, take up 2 seats, you whiskey drinking, private club hijacking, shorn head, hairy armpits, you fucking goddess. Tell someone. Trauma will bury itself inside your prison bar skin because you are brilliant, because the name you wore to Sunday school is not your name. Woman I did not birth, be colossal, take up space, take up knitting or boxing, take up with a circus and a woman with tattoos of women in bikinis on her arms, backpack through Nepal or Brooklyn, paint scenes of kink or puppies on the back of your lovers. Eat well and often. Gorge yourself on grapefruit and avocado, on dark chocolate and medium rare steak. Spray whipped cream down your pink panties. Marry the farmer because he knows how to handle a bull, or the girl in Bali because her kiss felt like scripture. You are scripture. You radical introvert, you fire-breathing dragon. Listen to Janelle Monáe or Florence and the Machine while dancing naked for your lovers, all of them. Say your name, say your name, say your name, all of them. Woman I did not birth. Do not walk lightly. Be heavy-footed, heavy-handed, be dirty. Let them try and tell you to clean your mouth, to clean your house. Strength will be required of you. Let them try and tell you how to grieve, how to love, how to hold on to living, what being a woman is. Thank you. And thank you very much to the jury and the Writers Guilds for creating this space.
Thank you, Rayanne. It's good to see you. Good to hear you read again. Next up, we have Allie Bryan, who is a finalist for the John White Memorial Essay Award. This is for work that's unpublished. And the jury for this category reads every piece blind, so they don't actually know who the authors of these pieces are until we announce them. So they didn't find out until just a couple weeks ago. So Allie Bryan is an award-winning novelist and creative nonfiction writer who explores the what ifs, the WTFs, and the wait a minutes of everyday life. She lives in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies, where she has a wrestling room in her garage and regularly gets choked out by her family. Allie Bryan, where are you?
I'm here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so this piece needs no introduction, but it is called Bad Extra. So I will get right into it. And because it's an essay and we're short on time, you won't get to the end. Okay. It's Reno, Nevada, 1984, and I'm standing on a street corner, cigarette pinched between my fingers. It's late night or early morning, however you want to look at it. Witching hour, last call, walk of shame, morning run. It's jackpots and fishnets, slots, big collars, chest hair, sin. My dress is desert beige with a smattering of pimento-colored flowers. It hangs mid-calf. My belt is braided leather, shoes white, wedged and open-toed. And my pantyhose, brown as a station wagon. On account of my outfit, I decide it's morning. A woman dressed like me is more likely sneaking a quick drag before hauling the kids off to church with a pocket full of tithe and casserole under my arm, not turning tricks or doing lines, certainly not walking the strip. I check my purse for my hymn book, empty. A gentleman lights my cigarette. How kind of him. I take a long haul, revel in the pleasing sizzle of the burning paper, and stare up at the casino's glittering marquee. What would my husband think of this? Me out here alone, kids babysitting themselves while he's on a business trip just across the state line in California, learning how to sell vacuums? I ponder this, lifting my gaze from the marquee to the sky. It's a gorgeous night, morning, for stargazing. It's inky and dense, and the stars shine like freshly minted dimes. Fuck. I looked at the drone. The one thing the director said, don't look at the drone. It's too late now. I stared directly at its underside, probably right into the camera. And it probably did something ridiculous like wince or wink. I probably waved. I'm so distraught by the error that I hardly notice it's Andrew Garfield idling in the Chevy across from me. Cut! A wrangler hands me my coat, points to a car and tells me to get warm. I gently butt my cigarette on the sidewalk and join a pair of fellow extras in the backseat of a 70s era sedan with Nevada plates and doors so stiff it takes a kind of Cold War strength to pry them open. It's freezing, the woman in the front seat says, rolling her hands in a messy orbit. She's not wrong. It's December in Calgary, -24. We're on the cusp of a polar vortex. She blows on her hands. Her half-smoked tea leaf cigarette rests on the dash. Her dress is prettier than mine, her hair glossy and feathered. When I saw that I'd been cast as a Reno passerby in a high-budget miniseries, I imagined an electric blue dress, red heels, and gold hoops. I imagined Farrah Fawcett. Instead, they dressed me as Tammy Faye without even indulging me in the evangelical eye makeup. I'm not even Tammy Faye. I'm her Mormon cousin from Salt Lake. The man in the driver's seat has a pervert mustache and a tropical print short sleeve shirt. He's smoked his entire cigarette during the last take and mumbles that he'll need a new one. He turns to me and asks, "First time?" "It is," I nod, jamming my frozen hands under my legs in an attempt to thaw them. I wonder how he knows. He probably saw the way I was yanking at my belt or trying to act natural, which is a sure way to look unnatural. He probably saw me look up at the drone, a very bad extra. I don't need to ask if it's his first turn or the woman's. I can tell by their ease. They've done this before. Measly, scintillating background work. The man shares that it was his car, not his ambition, that originally got him into acting back in the 1980s. Joan Collins was filming a movie in Calgary. He had a Corvette. Joan asked him for a ride, and what's a young man in the 80s to do when Joan Collins asks for a ride? You give her a goddamn tour of the city. No wonder this guy looks so natural. He's playing himself. From the car's tinted window, I watch the film crew in Arctic layers move about the set. A man with a blowtorch melts ice and snow on the street. A wrangler, whose job it is to look after the background performers, marches around, her face serious. She is the loudest of the production staff I've encountered. She likes to say things that don't need to be said. She loves the sound of her voice, the last word. Being the first to know is important to her. Being important is important to her. I was 6 years old in 1984. My memories vague. A boycotted Olympics, Reagan, Mulrooney, Michael Jackson, Karate Kid, Cabbage Patch Kids, McDonald's birthday parties, jelly shoes, G.I. Joe. I should be trying to channel my mom, homemaker, churchgoer, lover of the front pew, part of Jesus's A-team. She was 37 in 1984, a few years shy of where I am now, but my mom never smoked. I smile, remembering what a good mom she was, and adjust my hair clip. I have no choice but to continue the next take as the same frumpy wife of a salesman hooligan smoker I'd invented earlier. The man and woman discuss the shows they've already been on and the shows they're hoping to get on. They share details from film sets and TV shows, past and present. Black Summer, Fargo, The Last of Us. I don't normally have any interest in this kind of stuff, star secrets, gossip, drama, but at lunch, another background actor told me that Leonardo DiCaprio chartered a plane to fly in a special species of ant for The Revenant, a plane for ants. So I lean forward in my seat and listen in. Oh shit, the man says suddenly. They're getting ready to film. We rip off our coats, tumble out of the car, and take our positions. I notice that Andrew Garfield is wearing an FBI windbreaker, and only now do I make the connection that he was the guy who looked so familiar on set earlier that day. I'm as bad around celebrities as I am at acting. The more I try to act natural, the more outrageous I come off. I've also recognized an innate and horrid need to be seen by them and be seen looking good, as if my life may be forever changed. If just one Hollywood star could look me in the eye and say something flattering. You have nice hair, a suitable nose, seeing eyes. Previous to Garfield, the only celebrity run-in I had was with J-Lo in the Newark airport. It was early morning and I'd been up all night searching for my passport. The customs lady was mean and made me cry. I'd grabbed McDonald's to soothe myself and was in the process of choosing a magazine when J-Lo walked in, photoshopped and sleek as a yacht. She smiled at me with pity. So I did the only thing I could. I sipped my 10,000 calorie milkshake and parked myself in front of the fashion section. Back of the line, J-Lo. A member of the crew lights my cigarette and scurries off set. Rolling, the director yells. I try to focus, give myself a pep talk. Look good for Andrew Garfield. Jut your hip out a little. Smoke with a bit of a pout. Cross your ankles, you saucy parishioner. And whatever you do, don't look at the friggin' drone. A couple in a date stroll in front of me and I accidentally blow smoke in their faces. Last time they'd walked behind me. Great. I glance over at my co-stars, the other smokers. They make it look so natural. She leans in the passenger window, her smile like a disco ball between puffs. He drapes one hand out his window with Burt Reynolds' confidence. He's definitely man-spreading, though I can't actually see. The cameras are still rolling, so I take a few more drags, pace the sidewalk, willing my heels to stay put in their slingbacks. I hope Andrew Garfield doesn't notice that my feet resemble roast beef. I hear a strange noise, something mechanical, a tattoo machine or a bandsaw. What is a bandsaw doing on Stephen Avenue? I search for the mystery noise and quickly find it. It's a drone. Oh my God, I did it again. Where is the Wrangler? I need to be fired. I quickly look away, meander down the sidewalk and make eye contact with an extra playing a homeless guy. Why couldn't I have been cast as him? Cut. And that is where I will cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. Next up, we have Lori Hahnel, and we have two new categories this year in the literary awards. We have one for memoir, and we have another for short story collection. And Lori's short story collection, Vermin, is one of the finalists for that award. Lori Hahnel lives in Calgary and is the author of two novels, Love Minus Zero and After You've Gone, and two story collections, Nothing Sacred and Vermin. Stories from Enfield and Wizenti. A new novel is forthcoming from University of Calgary Press in 2023. Lori.
Thank you, Jason.
Take it away.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. This is so much fun. I wish we were all together somewhere having a drink. Before I get started, I would like to say a word of thanks to everyone at the Writers Guild who is involved with the gigantic task of making the Alberta Literary Awards happen. All your hard work and your dedication is much appreciated. I'd also like to congratulate my fellow finalists in this category, Norma and Uche, and congratulations as well to the finalists in all the other categories. So I'm going to read the brief opening passage of the first story in Vermin. It's called Dominion. July 1917. I open my eyes, and instead of my flowered bedroom walls, I see white all around me. For a second, I am disoriented, afraid. I read the tag above my head, Abercrombie & Fitch Outfitters, New York. Then my fog clears and it comes to me. This is Tom's new tent. Completely waterproof, he said. I see beads of condensation on the other side of the heavy silk. He warned me not to touch the walls or water would wick through, but I can't resist. My finger comes away damp and the drops jiggle and slide down the outside. The sun is not completely up yet, and already my upper lip and the nape of my neck are moist. Another muggy day. Last night, getting into the lake was all there was for it, never mind the leeches. Between the heat and the mosquitoes and the black flies, it was all we could do. I blush a little to think of it, but at the same time, the memory is very pleasurable. The sound of Tom chopping wood outside breaks my reverie. Much as I would like to linger here a little longer and think of yesterday, another whole day is before us. The rest of our lives is before us. I try to forget the heat as I pull on my camisole, shirtwaist, drawers, stockings, petticoat, and skirt. My boots are outside, and I unfasten the ties at the front of the tent. He stands in front of the fire he has started and smiles. Good morning, he says. He's dressed, has already combed his shock of dark hair. Good morning. Coffee? Yes, please. The hot and sleepy Sunday morning before, I discreetly wiped the perspiration from my lip and hairline with the back of my glove as father and mother and I listened to Reverend McAllister's sermon. God gave man dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl of the air, he said, over the cattle and over all of the earth. He gave man dominion over his helpmate, woman. God gave man dominion over all of nature, that he might subjugate it, that he might profit from it, that he might order nature as he sees fit, that he might control it. I looked at my parents' blank faces. No face around us had any expression, save possibly boredom. A few of the ladies fanned themselves. Mary Carlson's baby began to fuss and squall, and she whisked him outside. I wondered if I was the only one listening to the sermon. I am certain that I was the only one questioning it. Later, as I tended the garden, I thought about the Reverend's words again, about man subjugating nature. It certainly happened here with the forests, even in Algonquin Park, being logged at a great rate. Mother's garden is nature subjugated on a smaller scale. First, I pulled up all the weeds, the wild plants that have no business in the garden. Then I filled the watering can with rainwater collected in the barrel and watered the rows of onions, potatoes, and carrots we'll store in the cellar, and the beets, scarlet runner beans, and peas that Mother and I will can in the fall. Even the petunias Mother has planted in front of the just whitewashed veranda are under strict control. They are planted in neat rows, exactly 12 inches apart, deadheaded and trimmed regularly. Although these plants are grown simply for pleasure, they are tamed and domesticated by man, cross-pollinated over and over quite purposefully to obtain the precise color and scent desired. Still, I noticed that the petunia's perfumed velvet trumpets, a shockingly sensual fuchsia with a deeper private purple within, still tremble with the slightest breeze. They haven't bred that out of them yet. I know just how Tom would paint them. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. That was great. And the chat is popping off right now, everybody. So if you're watching this, just know that the chat is very excited. Next up, we have finalists for the George Bunier Award for Fiction is Theresa Shea and her novel The Shade Tree. Theresa Shea has published 2 novels. The Unfinished Child in 2013 was a finalist for the George Bunier Award for Fiction and the Alberta Reader's Choice Award. And her most recent novel, The Shade Tree, won the Guernica Prize and is a finalist for the George Bunier Award for Fiction. She lives in Edmonton and is at work on her next novel, The Dog Days of Planet Earth. Theresa.
Thank you, Jason. And I'm really happy to be here. I love listening to everybody read, and I'm just so moved and impressed. And it's the the things we do to one another and the things we do to the environment, it's really quite amazing. And I often think that, what are we doing right now that is going to look so awful later on? And you don't have to think too hard about that, actually. I'm going to maybe just talk a bit more about my book, like why I wrote it and, what possessed me to spend 9 years of my life on this. So I realize I'm quite a bit older than Ali with my little anecdote here. In 1963, when I was 3 months old, my mother took me and my 1-year-old sister to the Washington Monument, and she held me in her arms as Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. And it was a profound moment for her. And of course, I was just a little baby, like I didn't have much to do with it. But the more interesting part of the story that I found out years later is that she didn't tell my father she was going. So that was the thing that really got me thinking, because my father would have said not to go. There was also a lot of fear of violence that was going to occur on that day, potentially. But also they didn't have the same views about the race issue. The race issue was not our problem, was his opinion. So thinking about that, I thought about the first narrative most of us ever encounter is the family narrative that we have, and the one that we grow up in, right? So what happened? I started thinking, how could I knew that I wanted to query what it means to inherit a history of white supremacy. And I created some characters. It's historical fiction. The novel starts in 1910 and goes to 1964. And I wanted, I've got 2 white sisters, the Turner sisters, who grew up in a house with white supremacist views. This is the Jim Crow era. So even though slavery is no longer legal, there are lots of other means by which the same practices were being played out. So I have the 2 white sisters on the Turner family, and then I've got a Black midwife, Sliver Lanier. And I wanted to show the difference in the sisters. Why is it in some families that we just accept the narratives that we're given without question and just go on to then, distribute that narrative? And so why do some people do that? And why do some people actually question it and say, hey, I'm not sure that this is, is this right? Or maybe it's always been that way, but perhaps it's time for something to change. So that's the kind of the characters I was dealing with, to try to look at some of this history, which is really nasty. So, and also when I was a little baby in my mother's arms, in this moment of quite, euphoria, really, that something was positive was happening, I wouldn't have thought that 58 years later we'd be in the situation that we are today. So I used to think, that our evolution was an upward trajectory, but I think it's more of a spiral with different, ups and downs there. So the novel is set in a fictitious place in, there's 3 locations, one in Florida, which is Neyland Junction. Then there's a place called Slough Town, which is kind of a company town where Black workers work in the turpentine still. It's kind of like anyway, I might read a little bit. And then Washington, DC. So that's kind of what I was wanting to do. So the 1910 to 1964 time period, whites were still really using violence and terror to both psychologically and physically maintain their sense of privilege. So even though this sounds really dark, I think probably like even what I'm reading today, that there's a certain level of compassion and hope. I think that the very act of creating and writing and I think just there's great potential for our species, and sometimes we have to come, or I guess I realize I come at things I don't know. What do? I don't know. I'm going to read just this little bit here from Slough Town, just a paragraph. And this is a time when Sliver is a midwife. Her husband is Gideon. And this is her first time she has traveled. She's living in Neelan Junction now. She's never been to Slewtown. So I'll just read this little bit and wrap it up. As she walked, she remembered Gideon's history lesson. In the late 1800s, someone had taken a knife to a longleaf pine and dug in deep, maybe carving initials of love. And from that trunk, a golden sap had flowed like syrup. And that sap, when collected and boiled and handled this way and that, became tar, pitch, and turpentine. And all those wooden boats with hulls big as cliffs could be patched and sealed with the product of that great tree. The only thing required was human labor, convicts, black hands to toil in Florida's twin industries, orange trees and pine trees, citrus and turpentine, living side by side, Slewtown. I'll stop there. Thanks and congratulations to everyone.
Thank you so much, Theresa. Thank you for telling us more about the book. I think that was super helpful. Next up, we have finalists for the Howard O'Hagan Award for Short Story, which is sponsored by the Alexandra Writers Center Society in Calgary. We have Rod Moody-Corbett and his story Malady Head. Rod Moody-Corbett's work has appeared in The Fiddlehead, Riddle Fence, Drift, and on the Paris Daily Review Daily. He has been shortlisted for a CBC Canada Writes Short Story Prize, the Paris Review's Windows on the World contest, and he writes regularly for Canadian Notes and Queries. Rod, take it away.
Hi there. Thank you, Jason. And thank you to the Writers Guild of Alberta. And big congratulations to everyone who's nominated today, and to my fellow readers. It's been a real delight listening to everyone tonight. So I'm just going to read the beginning of my short story, Malady Head. It takes place in Newfoundland, where I grew up. It concerns the disappearance of a childhood friend and the discovery of a putrescent whale corpse later on. So I hope you enjoy. We pired the jellies as high as we could, the tentacles slick, glistening, studded with sea crumb and sand. I tended the joists with snaps of tossed ply that I dragged down from camp. You could see on a few of the laths little twists and stainings of rust where someone had plucked out the nails. I arranged these in a sort of canted, lean-to-like fashion along the layers of frigid slop, and bolstered down their ends with thick, mucky stones, and coiled in bits of newspaper and bark and clumps of dry seaweed frond that Jacob claimed wouldn't catch on account of what he kept calling an inner damp, but I doubted him. The area of beach where we'd staked out our pyre sat away from the main campsites, just down past the viewing deck where the park people had installed a series of stern, quarter-fed telescopes for tourists to ogle out on the tide and wheeling turns and things, but where we were, you'd want to step right down off the bluff to know about. I sat with my feet kicked out wide on a slab of cold, clammy shale, grinding match heads into a small black film canister. Spiders, thin and gray, cringed through the looser stones, a wan light catching on their brittle bodies, bellies no broader than the drip of a pen. Setting aside my match heads, which I'd pestled down to a fine ruddy dust with my thumb, I looked out on the water where Jacob stood plying the reaches, prodding at the strands of sludge and wagging kelp. It was getting oily out. The sun was far away and low and dented. Waves sucked and fled. Jacob was making do with 2 sticks, the fatter of these warped and bold like a pelvis. We had another hour yet before supper. I'd been invited along as Jacob's friend from school for a weekend of camping with his family. My family didn't believe in camping. Standing at the edge of my bedroom watching me pack, my father said, "What do you need those for? You expecting snow?" He was referring to my sorrels. "Hiking," I explained. "Hiking," he said. "What do you mean hiking?" He wore the high blotchy shorts that my mother called his indoor pair because she wouldn't be caught dead with them in public. Ribbons of worn khaki drooped in rude plenitude, dangling down the fronts of his legs like reins. He studied my sorrels, That's not hiking, he said. That's just wandering around in the woods in weird-looking boots. I went back to my pyre. I took up a pinch of the match heads and sprinkled this quantity over top the jellies and fed in another layer of bark. Birch bark worked best for what I had in mind, but the park people didn't want you skinning the live trees, so I'd spent the morning scurrying around the campground in a mad panic, foraging, gunning for tumbled flutes. There were jellyfish, dead jellyfish, scattered all across the beach, and I wanted to burn them. Jacob said they weren't poisonous anymore since they were already dead, but I wondered why, if this were true, why it was the gulls didn't swoop down and gobble them. Jacob stepped out of the shallows, idling his sticks over a dry, dingy fret of sand. We were full up on jellies, but Jacob lurched anyway, hauling up to me with the guts of another, sauntering this haggardness in front of himself like a cauldron of sloshing broth. There's no room, I said. It'll fit. He let go of his fat stick and slipped the jelly onto where the others lay huddled, a drool of tentacles like a slow yolk of spittle. We haven't got enough matches. Sure we do, he said. The top one was already starting to slither, so I fetched it down off the stack with my hands, letting the reeking, rubbery guts run right through my fingers. It felt wonderful. It felt like sinking your hands inside a cold, heavy sauce. Who's that coming over there? I pitched the jelly to the ground and tracked Jacob's gaze to the viewing deck, where a man in a strange hat was making his way off the embankment, clutching at the wisps of ridgy trees as he skittered down the slope. The hat was some sort of cowboy safari deal, short-brimmed, but with one of those tall, tightly dimpled puckers on top. What you guys up to? He called out. We didn't say anything. Jacob brought up his long stick in one hand and gave the tossed jelly a handsome thwack, a shudder of frail purple-white goop popping off the rocks, smutching us. What are those, jellyfish? The man stalked around our pyre, nudging stones, poking laths. You shouldn't be doing this, he said. You shouldn't be out here and you shouldn't be doing this. The man took off his hat and rubbed his brow. He had thin hair, rusty, the color of a peeling cut. Where's your parents? A pair of young-looking gulls had taken interest in our pyre. The birds had good size, but their feathers were still blotchy and flecked. The man with the hat gave out a dry tusk and stomped his foot down loud on the rocks, and the gull closest to him shrugged off. The other one kept at it. And that's where I'll stop. Thank you.
Rod, that was great. Thank you so much. Last but not least, we have a fellow finalist in the same category, the Howard O'Hagan Award for Short Story. We have CJ Lavigne and her story Cenotaph. CJ Lavigne is a speculative fiction writer whose publications include the urban fantasy novel In Veritas from New West Press in 2020, as well as short fiction that has appeared in On Spec, Fusion Fragment, and Augur magazine. She lives in Red Deer. CJ, take it away.
Thanks. Hi. I know we're running long. I will keep my preamble short. So this is Cenotaph. It is from Augur magazine issue 4.1. For a while, I was just referring to it with my friends as statue walks into a coffee shop. So here we go. Statue walks into a coffee shop. I've already been on shift for 3 hours when the statue comes in. Some guy in a puffy coat holds the door for her. She's got snow crumbling off her head and shoulders, little rivulets of melt running down her carved hair. She's grimed old marble, not well maintained, with gray streaks running from her shoulder down through that hint of sculpted gown. Her face is young, but she's not. Her hair is pitted, and there's a crack running down her left cheek just to the edge of her mouth. Her right wrist is chipped. Her nose is still pert and smooth, though, and her eyes have the unseeing gloss of a once polished finished. There's one little clean, bright space on her gown, just down at her knee. One of those spots that countless people have touched, wearing it down slowly with each affectionate fingertip. The statue stands in line, politely, and I ignore her. The cafe is a little crowded. It's just coming up on lunch, but people give her space. This is the city, and she's not bothering anyone. The line progresses. Non-fat caramel cappuccino, 1 pump hazelnut latte, small coffee, black. I finish with Mr. Extra Foam Half Calf Soy Latte. His name on the cup is Gerald. And then the statue's next in line. She glides up to the cash. I have to look at her now. Frost thaws along the side of her nose. What can I get you? I ask, but she just stands there. Her eyes are marble blank. People are waiting behind her, so finally I punch in a cappuccino. That'll be $4.35, I say, without much hope, because I don't think she's got a wallet anywhere in that stone dress. I don't feel like dealing with this. I dig out my phone and slide my own card under the scanner. My day just got $4.35 less profitable. You can pick up your order to the left. She moves, and don't ask me how a statue moves. I can't explain it. She doesn't walk, she's got some way of gliding across the floor. My eyes can't follow. I can only picture the pedestal she's left empty behind her. We're short-staffed, which means I make her coffee, and I slide it across the counter. The statue just stands there, grimy hands pressed to her chest. Your drink, I prompt, which does no good. A long moment later, I write statue on the cup. That seems to appease her, even though she doesn't take the thing. Instead, she glides back out the door when the next customer walks in, some startled guy who apologizes when she brushes past him. I set the coffee to the side. For me, for later. I paid for it anyway. Do you know her? Asks the next lady who comes up to the cash. Older, benignly curious, her hair in a loose gray braid. No, I lie, and I don't feel bad about it. What can I get you? It's dark by the time I get home. The silence of the place is new enough that I'm still startled by it. Not even the cat greets me. I don't have a cat anymore. There's still plenty of fur around, clinging to my pants or rolling in tufts across the cheap parquet flooring. I haven't swept. The place smells like dust, and I should probably scrub the bathroom too. I should do a lot of things. Let's not talk about the kitchen. If they find my body under a pile of takeout containers, well, I knew the risk I was taking. I shove aside a mass of unfolded laundry so I can drop down on the couch. I'm pondering pizza or pizza, and I'm sitting there in the dark when a white figure looms at the window and I just about scream. Okay, I scream a little. She's a ghost behind faded gauze curtains, and it takes me a second to realize I'm not about to be murdered. I stalk to the patio door, shove the curtains aside, and step out. It's cold and dark, and my feet are bare. The statue's just lurking there, posture perfect, face stone blank. Get fucked, I tell her, as politely as possible under the circumstances. Then I go back inside and I go to bed. I don't need pizza that badly. She's gone in the morning. I think about upper floor apartments. I hate winter. I hate that it's cold. I hate that the sidewalks are slippery with ice and the marks of everyone else's frozen footsteps. I hate remembering her hand in mine and how it was warm then, and she would walk next to me carrying a basket, letting me carry the blanket. The sunlight dappled the trees. Now the cemetery park at the end of the street is closed and dark. The tree branches are just jagged fingers, bare and gnarled and reaching for the sky. I glimpse a white figure just there under the spreading shadows, and I look away. No, I say firmly to no one. I'm late for work. That's it for me. Thanks very much.
Thank you, CJ. I'm smiling because somebody sent me an email today asking if it was okay to swear, but only one person did that. So everybody else just went ahead with it, and I just think it's cute both ways. So whoever did, if I don't know if it's you today or it was somebody tomorrow. Did you ask? Oh, it was you. Oh, okay, perfect. Maybe that's why I was smiling. I think that's everybody. So first of all, did I forget anybody? So you better say something now. I think I did the list properly. thanks to everybody that is watching this either live on YouTube or Facebook, or that watches this after the fact. Thank you very much to the writers tonight. Thank you for taking the time to share your work. Thank you also for hanging out and supporting your fellow writers. Comments in the chat or just with your presence. I think that's very much appreciated. It shows there's a lot of camaraderie here, and so I appreciated seeing it too. So the video will be available for everybody to watch right now if anybody missed it or had to dart out early. Tomorrow night we do this all again, and we will have Ben Loff, Jessica Waite, David Van Bell, Catherine Abbas, Omar Mualim, Uche Umezurike, Megan Mahoney, Julie Sedevi, Dale Lee Kwong, Glenn Hooser, Tyler Engstrom, if he makes it home from the airport on time. So thank you again, everyone, very much for watching. The 2022 Alberta Literary Award finalists readings this is what you just watched, and tomorrow, and the awards gala is on Saturday, June 11th. And you can keep an eye on the Writers Guild social media or writersguild.ca for more info. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.